So I just want to briefly discuss a few of the finer details with regards to the Euro version of Merriment. Now, chances are high, after watching the DVD, you will have first placed a 50-cent coin inside your gimmick. You will then have placed your gimmick next to a regular €2 coin. Having done that, you would then have entered into a game of Spot the Difference. The reason being is there are a couple of differences between these two coins. Firstly, there's a slight difference in shade between the two centerpieces, and secondly, there is no naturally existing artwork that would marry these two coins together. However, having said that, we will be employing the use of some psychological and physical techniques that will allow this gimmick to fly. But before we discuss those, I want to stress three main points. First of all, your spectators are never going to be afforded this opportunity. Never will your spectators get to see the gimmicked coin in close relation to the physical coin. Secondly, the only other person, other than yourself of course, who is going to get a close look at the gimmick will be the spectator who is going to mark or initial this coin. Lastly, this gimmick isn't in play for very long. Generally what will happen is you're going to borrow a coin from a spectator, swap it for the gimmick, have the gimmick marked or initialed, and then swap it back out again. So with those 3 points in mind, let's move on to the psychological and physical ways in which we can get this gimmick to fly. So how can we use psychology to help disguise the gimmick? The answer to this question is very straightforward. We must learn to become more implicit and less explicit. So the less we say, the more the spectator is forced to assume. So it's okay, given the context of the routine, to ask for the loan of a 50-cent coin and a €2 coin. However, for the entire duration the gimmick is visible to our spectators, we must never refer to it by name, value or denomination. The reason being is that anything that we say about the coin itself will only serve to draw attention and focus to it, and that's not what we want. By saying less, we allow the spectator to assume more. Now bear in mind that the brain is essentially a pattern matching system. It learns based on prior experience. So anything that we're familiar with, anything that exists within our environment that we are already familiar with, will not draw our attention unless we outwardly draw attention to it. So by saying nothing about the coin and just allowing it to naturally exist within the environment, the spectators may look at the coin, but their brains will tell them that it's a €2 coin. We don't have to do that. Allow the spectators to have a casual glance, a casual look at the coin, that's fine. Because the spectators' minds will dictate that this must be a €2 coin based on their own prior learning experience. Because they will recognise that the size of the coin is identical to a €2 coin, they'll recognise this outer ring as being part of a €2 coin, and they'll recognise a gold centrepiece, even if partially obscured, as being part of a €2 coin. So remember, we don't need to outwardly say this is a €2 coin, just allow the spectator to draw their own assumptions and allow the spectators to ultimately fool themselves. Okay, now that we've discussed a little bit about the psychology of using the gimmick, let's discuss several ways in which we can physically help the gimmick along too. But before we go into that, I just want to discuss a little about the physical artwork on the coins. Because as mentioned, there is no perfect like-for-like imagery that exists on both the 50-cent coin and the €2 coin as well. But the one thing that does work for us is that within the EU there's so many different designs that exist on the 50-cent coin, and there's also an abundance of different artwork designs that appear on the €2 coins themselves. So these actual coins were given to me by a good friend of mine, Patrick, and the nice thing is that each and every one of them has a different design on it. So with that in mind, if you were to take any one of those coins at random, either a €2 coin or a 50-cent coin, partially obscure what the physical coin is, and ask somebody to identify what that coin was at a glance, I very much doubt that they're going to be able to do so. There's also a few extra things that we're going to do to help things along. So what can we do physically to help things along? First of all, when choosing a coin to insert into our gimmick, we're going to purposefully choose an artwork design that is very busy. When we place that artwork design into the Merriment gimmick, not only is it partially obscured by the silver outer ring, we are also going to orientate that artwork facing down over from the spectator's point of view. This way, when the spectator gets to look at the coin and put their initials on it, they're viewing a partially obscured design which is orientated the wrong way, which is very busy, in fact so much so that they're going to be unable to physically focus on what that imagery is. Not that they're going to physically be looking out for it anyway. They've just been given a single job, and that is just to mark an initial of the coin. We're not really putting any emphasis on the coin itself, other than the fact that we just wish for the spectator to mark it. And that brings me on to another point. We would always strive to borrow the €2 coin from one spectator and have a second spectator mark or initial it. The reason being is the spectator who first gives you the €2 coin, they may already be forearmed with what the physical design on their coin looks like, whereas a second spectator won't be. The other thing which we can do is actually use our fingers to obscure the design up until the exact moment that the spectator approaches with the pen. So the moment that the spectator approaches with the pen, we withdraw our fingers, have the coin marked, and at that point, the actual physical markings on the coin become the focus of attention. Nobody will be interested in the design of the coin because the actual physical marks on the coin will be the one thing that draws the attention of the eye. And also bear in mind, I didn't mention this before, but it's worth mentioning again, that the actual physical gimmick itself is only in play for a relatively short period of time. We will be borrowing the coin from one spectator, switching it for the gimmick, simply having it marked, and then as soon as it's been marked and that job's done, we will be switching it back out again. So if you put all of those things together, you can ensure that the artwork design is going to fly by any spectator. The other thing that I wanted to briefly discuss is the coloration difference between the two coins. As mentioned within the introduction, there is no point whereby the actual physical loaded gimmick is going to be compared with a regular coin. So please remember that. The second thing that we can do to obviously help disguise the difference is to choose our performance environment wisely. If we're operating in bars, restaurants, nightclubs where the light is naturally dimmer, then that's going to help us along fantastically. If we must perform it in an environment where the light is brighter, then what we must do is orientate ourselves so that the light is on our back. This way we can actually physically hold the gimmick in the shade, and also that is going to help disguise any discrepancy within the coloration difference of the coins. So the other thing that I want to discuss is the actual physical orientation that the coin is held in when it's in play. What we must strive to do is to hold the coin as much as possible on a horizontal plane. The reason for this is by holding it on a horizontal plane, the only part of the coin that the majority of the spectators get to see is the silver surround, which actually belongs to a physical €2 coin. So in this fashion, the spectators are seeing exactly what they should be seeing. You can actually also use your thumb to cover the golden centerpiece, which of course is the only discrepant part, right up until the moment where you're going to have this coin initialed. And even then, whilst having the coin initialed, whilst employing the techniques mentioned earlier, you can still use both hands to obscure that coin from the remaining spectators' views. So coupling everything together, all of the techniques, you will safely be able to fly with the merriment gimmick and perform all of the routines successfully. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me direct at info@mindfx.co.uk, and thank you once again for your purchase. Now, another little subject area that I'd like to briefly touch upon is this whole notion of the wife test. Because us as performers, when we seek to test a routine or an idea for the very first time, we will often turn to this same core group of people. This could be our partners and lovers, it could be our friends, or indeed other magicians and mentalists. And when we do this, we almost enter this subconscious agreement with them. We walk into that agreement with a question: will this fool them? And from their perspective, they translate the question as, can they figure out how it works? And by virtue of this, they tend to be a more critical and analytical group to perform for. Because anything that we say, anything that we do, and ultimately anything that is involved within that routine is more likely to be questioned by them. Not guaranteed, but more likely. Now, when we consider that mindset compared to the mindset of a general lay audience who are just there to be entertained by us, it's easy to appreciate that what mightn't necessarily fool our test group can actually, and is actually far more likely to fool a lay audience. So with that in mind, don't feel disheartened if something doesn't fool your test group. Please give it a go with a live lay audience.